All right, we're back and we're ready to do the assembly for the placemat part of our class. So we're going to take the placemat bag. Inside that bag, we're going to pull out the group H templates, and we're also going to grab the other templates, which are your Fabrics A to F group of templates. So that's all we need for now. We're going to leave the binding in here, as well as our accent pieces and our A1 and A2 pieces. So we'll just leave that to the side in the bag. And we're going to start by cutting these apart. So you're just going to cut each shape out of here. So that your temp 2 is a square. We're going to cut that out. Temp 7, 11, 15, and 19 are rectangles. We're just going to cut those rectangles out. And then your temps 5 to 9 are just smaller versions of the top ones. So people are asking us why we chose to do this pattern with templates. We did because the diamonds are on point and because there's two pieces to the diamond. So if you look at these placemats, this is the big rectangle and this is the small rectangle. So we chose to cut them in the same way, the same angles, so that your patterns will actually match. So if you've got, especially when you've got a patterned fabric like these ones, if you're doing solids or something that doesn't have a pattern, you don't necessarily have to do that. But because we're using patterns, we just find that when you do it this way, this looks like a diamond. It doesn't look like it's two pieces. It looks like it's one piece. So that was the logic behind these templates. And it's just a different way of doing something. And the way that we do it with the staples, it makes it nice and easy, nothing moves, and it's a quick way of cutting fabric without having to measure everything. So it's just a different twist on how to do something. So what we're going to do now is just cut these apart. So again, these should all be stapled, so this should not be moving on you. And before we're going to cut, we're going to double check to make sure that our fabrics are indeed in the right order. So fabric A should be on top, B should be your second, C should be your third, D should be your fourth, E is your fifth, and F is your sixth fabric. So make sure that you have them in order from A down to F. So if that is the case, then we're going to go ahead and cut. If you notice that you aren't in the right order, just remove the staples, restack your fabric, and then restaple your template on top. So we're going to go ahead and cut that. So I'm just going to cut my diagonal lines first. Just so that I'm not twisting and turning for every line. All right, so now that I have those cuts done, I'm just going to take each piece and then just cut the other two sides off. All right, so we've got that group cut. We're going to do the same thing with our H group of temps. So this one we had cut apart so I could staple those on. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to cut this other section off first. It's very important here to have a sharp blade when you're cutting through this many fabrics. Alright, we are done cutting our templates. So now we're ready to set up our diamond pattern. So I'm just going to pull out here page 3 of the pattern. So we're going to be using this diagram right here. So that's what I'm going to take that diagram and I'm just going to lay out my pieces exactly like they are here. So I'm going to find my templates. So I'm just going to lay these out so I can see the numbers. So your outside pieces are all going to be your background, so your temp from your temp H paper, and the middle is all going to be from your focus fabrics, your A to F fabric. So we're going to start with temp 1, which is this one right here. So we're going to lay that just like it is right here. Temp 2 is your square. We're going to lay that here. Temp 3 is the other corner. Then we're going to find temp 4, which is this one, and temp 5. And you can see here that we have writing in the margins. So for example, your temp 1 template has temp 2. That means that it is actually touching temp 2. Okay? Your temp 2 template here has temp 1 because it's touching temp 1. So that's how you can tell. So for example, your temp 5, you don't want to put it like that. You want to make sure that the temp 4 side is against the temp 4 template. Okay? So we've got that like that. Temp 6 is going to be here. And temp 7. So again, 6 against 6. And then we got 8, which is right here. And then 9. So again, 8 against 8. And then 10. That's right here. 11. I'm gonna have to move this up here. And then we need a 12, which is right here. 13, 14, and 15. And 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So So I've left space here for a reason, because we're going to have to play with these a little bit. Okay, so that's what it should look like. So the next thing we're going to do is just take the staples out of your temp 2, that's your square here, and out of your 5 and 7. Out of 9 and 11. Make sure your staples end up in the garbage, because if you run over them with a rotary cutter, you'll be having to change your blade. So out of 13 and 15 as well, and out of 17 and 19. All right. So what we're going to do is, because we want every one of these diamonds to be different in a row, we need to do some shuffling. So if I take my papers off of these right now, so temp 2, temp 7, and temp 5, you can see that my fabrics are all the same. Like I have all the same fabric here on top. So if I go ahead and start sewing this, all of these diamonds are going to be all of this fabric, and we don't want that, okay? Because the very first fabric on each pile is going to make one placemat, or one diamond strip for each placemat. Okay, so what we're going to do is take the top fabric, so fabric A, and just put it on the bottom of the first pile. So we're going to do that. And now we're going to do is take take a pen, and on your temp 2 you're gonna put the order of your fabric. So now it's going to be B to A on here, just so that if you get muddled up at some point, you know that the fabric should be in this order in this pile. Okay, and this is all on your page 1. So if you look on page 1 of your pattern, this is where we're telling you how to shuffle here. So we're telling you take fabric A from temp 2 and move to the bottom. Okay, so that's what we just finished doing. Then for fabrics, for templates 5 and 7 here, we're going to take A and B. So I'm going to take my fabric A and my fabric B, which are going to be the top 2. So I'm taking both and I'm just laying them here and putting the rest of the pile on top. And I'm going to do the same thing with temp 5. So A and B to the bottom and on top. So you can see here that I have different fabrics now in those 2 piles. Okay, so on here now you're going to say those are going to be templates or fabric C to B is going to be that one, and it's also going to be this one. So for templates 9 and 11, you're going to take the top 3, so A, B, and C. So I'm just taking A, B, C, bringing it to the bottom, and A, B, and C to the bottom, and that on top. So now I've got fabric D to C in these piles. And these ones we're going to take A, B, C, and D. So that's the top 4 down to the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4 down to the bottom. So now we have fabric E to D in these piles. And for 17 and 19, you're going to take A to E. So basically you're bringing the top one to the top. So it's going to look like that. So that's going to be fabric F to E. So just a reference so that if you get mixed up, you know what the order should be. All right, so now what we're going to do is take the rest of our staples out in our background fabric. So we're just going to remove the staples from those piles. So this is where we're going to exchange these staples for either paper clips or Wonder clips, just to hold our piles together. Okay, so we've got those out. So we're just going to sew one of these. I'm going to sew one of these together. There's different ways of doing this. You can either chain them, sew them all at once if you want to, but we found that most people like just to do the first one especially by itself, just to show you how it works. So we're going to do that. So what we're going to do is just take the top fabric and put it on top of your pile. Put the paper back on and either take a paper clip or a Wonder clip, clip this together, and just set this guy on top and make sure you put him back the right way here. So I'm going to take the top one from this one, put it here, and I'm just going to clip that together. Take the top one here and clip that together. So by putting everything on top of your paper, you know that that's the one that you should be picking, and you won't pick two off of a same pile. Okay, so we're just laying out our very first diamond strip here. So we're going to take this top guy, put that back there. So if you don't have paper clips, we have paper clips all the time because we do a lot of paper piecing. You can use Wonder clips or whatever you have at hand. So we're going to do that. So you can do this as well. Make sure you just take one. So as we're going down the line here, you can see that our diamonds are all going to be different. All right, we're almost down to the bottom. Okay, so you should have 5 different colors of diamonds here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If it's not like that, then we've got a problem. So then we just need to figure that out. But that's what it should look like. All right, so now we're going to start sewing this together. So again, we're just going to watch what our papers say. So this is saying that temp 1 is being sewn to temp 2. So we're going to sew those 2 together. So we're going to go like that. So we're just going to put that on top, right sides together. Then we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew that together. And I'm just going to start my iron here. Make sure everything's lined up. So you can see here, if you can see that, Sammy. So you can see when I lay these down, we've cut these corners here so that everything matches right one on top of the other. We don't have any little ears sticking out, so you don't have to guess as to where that piece is going. Take this to the sewing machine, make sure everything's lined up. And we're going to start sewing. So just a regular 1/4 inch for this. All right, so I'm going to go and press this, and you're going to be pressing towards the higher numbers. So in this case, we have template 1 and 2, so we're pressing towards temp 2, which is the square. So pressing's important in this project. There's lots of seams, so take the time to make sure you've pressed and that there's no give in your seam here. So we're going to put this back like this, and the next piece is saying that it should be going to being sewn to temp 1 and 2, and this is temp 1 and temp 2, so that means that this is going right sides together with those 2 pieces. So again, we've cut these so that this side of your piece is matching up with that, and this one should be matching up exactly on that side there. So exact here and exact right here, okay? And again, we're going to go and sew that 1/4 inch. So I've got, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I have my quilting plate on here, which means I have just a single hole where my needle's going in. That makes a big difference when you're sewing little pieces like this. If you don't have that for your machine, that's fine, it'll be a slot. Just use a cheater piece so that your fabric doesn't go inside that slot. So what you just do is just start sewing on a scrap piece of paper or a scrap piece of fabric, and then you just carry on onto your piece. So then you'll just cut that cheater piece off and leave it there for the next one if you need it. So again, we're going to go back to our iron. I'm going to set my seam, and now I'm pressing towards temp 3, which is the piece that we just added. So I guess if you're always going to be pressing towards a piece that you've just added. That's going to be your higher temp piece. All right, so now we've got this. So if I move these to the side so I can see my papers. So this is going to be sewn to temp 2 and 3. But before we do that, we need to sew this to these 2 together. So temp 4 to temp 5. So we're going to sew these 2 together. because this one is saying that it has to go against 4 and 5. So that means I have to sew these two together before I can put it on that side. Okay, so again, I'm basically just taking my piece, putting it right sides together, going to my machine, and I'm going to sew that side together. Press that again, and again I'm pressing towards temp 5, which is your little rectangle. So this is coming back over here. So now I can take my temp 4 and 5 right sides together with my 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to go like that. And again, you can see how this side is going to end up lining up with the edge here, and your other side is going to be right on your other side as well. So we're going to go and sew that together. So now we're pressing this towards temp 4 and 5. Alright, so now we've got this. So now we're going, same thing here. So this is saying this piece is supposed to go to temp 1, 2, and 5, which is 1, 2, and 5. But we need to put these two together first. So we need to put 6 and 7 together first. Yeah, like that. So again, these edges are matching up like that. So again, we're going to be sewing to the higher number. So you're pressing towards temp 7, which is your rectangle. So we're going to bring that back here. So now this is going to temp 1, 2, and 5. So we're going to lay this on top of there. And again, these are just lining up like that. Don't try and match this seam to that seam, because it's not going to work, and you don't want it to, because your diamond is like that. So your point is in between these 2 points right here. What is important here is that you're matching up this side and that side. Alright, so we're going to press that towards the piece that we just added. Alright, so you can see here how that point is up here, so make that point is not to match with this seam right here. So it should be looking like that, which goes right here. So next is going to be to sew, oops, leave that clip together. We need to sew 8 and 9 together. So we're going to flip temp 9 onto temp 8. We're going to go sew those two together. pressing to temp 9, which is your little rectangle. So we've got that. So now we're going to put this to temp 4, 5, and 7. So we're going to flip that onto there. And again, lining up your side edge and your bottom side edge right here. And we're going to press to the piece that we've just added. Alright, so now we have this. So before we can sew back onto this one, we're going to sew template 10 onto 11. And we're going to press that towards temp 11, which is your rectangle. So that goes back like that, and now this is going to go to this side. We're going to sew that together. And you're going to press towards the piece that we just added. All right, so now we've got that. So now we're going to sew 13 onto 12. So we're going to do that. We're going to press towards your rectangle, which is temp 13. I'm going to bring this back here, and now this is going to go on to here. And again, making sure that these are lining up. So the bottom and the side should be right on one on top of the other. Press towards the piece that we just added. Now we're going to sew 14 onto 15. So again, just lining up these sides. Towards the rectangle, which is your 15. Then this comes back over here, and we're going to flip that on to our big piece and sew that together. press that to the piece that we just added. Okay, so we'll bring this back here. So now we're going to sew your 17 onto your 16. So we're just going to flip 16 onto, or 17 onto your 16 and go sew that. All right, we're going to press this towards 17, which is your rectangle. So this comes back over here, and we're going to sew this onto the big piece, and again lining up side and bottom. We're going to press that towards the piece that we just added. This comes back over here. So now we're going to take 18 and 19. So you're going to flip 19 up onto 18, and you're going to sew those two pieces together. Alright, and we're pressing towards 19, which is your rectangle. So this comes back, like that. So this is going to flip up onto the big piece, again lining up this side and the bottom side. You're going to press that towards the side that you've just added. So now we're down to here. We're going to add 20 on next. So that one's just going to go down here. Alright, so we're pressing towards 20, which is the piece that we just added. And then we're just going to add our last piece, which is 21. And again, you're lining up your edges. Alright, we're pressing that towards 21. Alright, so this is what the diamond pieced part of your placemat should look like. And these should be fairly straight here. If you're sewing with your templates lined up properly, your edge should be straight. If you're missing the intersection, you'll be off a little bit like I am right here. And this should be 3.5 by 12.5. So this is going to be this. My ruler is 3.5. So it's, and that's what it is. So if you press in between every piece, and it's probably a good idea if you have some best press as you're going, just to spritz it a little bit when you're pressing. It just makes it a nice crisp seam. So we need to make 5 more of those. So what you're going to do is the exact same thing that we just finished doing. Just take the top piece from each pile again and bring it to the top. And then you're just going to repeat the process that I just did. So you can just, to continue, if you need to see that process again, at this point, just rewind me back to when I started with this one, and you're going to be doing the exact same thing, only with the next piece on your pile. Okay, so you go ahead and do that. I'm going to go sew mine, and then I'll be back to show you how to assemble the rest of the placemat. Hi everyone, I'm back with my diamond, my piece diamond part of my placemat. So that's these right here. So before we continue this, what you can see here, I've laid out my little bits of my A to F fabric that I had left from cutting my 12.5-inch strips. What I'm going to do with this, just so that I'm not hauling these long strips around with me, is I'm just going to cut a chunk off, get rid of this, and then just put these in order. So I'm going to put F, E, D, C, B, and A together. And I'm just going to staple those together. So that's just going to be my little reference key. And if you're scared that these little tags are going to fall off, at this point you can just take a pen and just mark each fabric A to F. Because we need to make sure that our fabrics are staying in order, and you need to remember which ones are which. So the first thing we're going to do is just put this here. You're going to grab the bag, your placemat bag, and we're going to pull out the rest of the fabric that's in there, except for the binding, because we don't need that just straight yet. And we're going to set this up to start building our placemats. So you had 12 of these G pieces, so you're going to have 2 piles. We're going to make 2 piles of 6. That's 2, 3, and 6, and I've got 6 over here, so that's going to go like that. Then you're going to grab your A1 and A2 pieces. So your A2 pieces are going to the left of the first pile of G, and your A1s are going to go to the right of your second pile of G pieces. So it should look like that. And then your pieced section with the diamonds is going to go in between your two G pieces. So the important part here is that we have these in order. So if you remember right, we shuffled A to the back of the first pile. So the first fabric, your first diamond here should be a B fabric. So if I take my key, that one is right. The next one needs to be C. So I'm just going to turn this upside down like that. So my C fabric is this one, so that one is right, and then D should be next, which is right, and then your E fabric, and then your F fabric, and then back to your A. So that's the order that these strips should be. And of course the full square, so your attempt 2 fabric should be at the top of your pile. So the other trick, if you if you're not sure at this point what's A, what's B, what's C, if you've lost that somewhere in the mix, the other way to figure this out is to look at these diamonds. So you've got 5 fabrics here. Your A2 and A1 are going to be the fabric that is not in these diamonds. So you can see here that my fabric A is the one that's not in this strip. So that's the other way to figure that out. So at this point, we are now ready to sew our placemats together. This little key, you can just put that into your runner bag at this point, because we still need to keep things in order for our runner, so you can just keep that hanging around. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is sew our G pieces to our pieced diamond section. But before we do that, I just want you to check very quickly to see how big your pieces are. So they should be 3.5 by 12.5. And that mine is very close to that. So because there's lots of seams in here, you might end up with a little bit bigger or a little bit shorter. If they're a little bit shorter, that's not a big deal. You can just trim these, your G pieces and your A1 and A2 pieces down to the same size as your pieced section. If they're a little bit bigger, you can just take a ruler and just sliver trim. Take a little bit off each end so that it's down to 12.5. Like, you're not going to be off by a whole pile, but if you just make it the same size, it'll be a lot easier to piece your placemat together. Also, I want you to note that you can see here that my points are more than 1/4 inch away from the sides of my piece section. That's intentional. We made these diamonds so that they're floating away from the seam that we're going to be sewing right now, our G and our piece section together. So you don't have to worry about clipping off these points. They should not be in the seam line, so don't try and get them there. So we're going to go ahead and sew this together. So I'm just going to take this one, my top one, and I'm just going to make sure that my G piece fits like that, the 2 ends together, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew that. So I'm going to sew one to each side. And again, if you don't have a quilting plate on your machine, you can just use a little cheater piece. That's what I have these little pieces here for, which just gets the seam going, and then it won't go into that slot when you're sewing. So again, this is just a 1/4 inch seam. Again, as you notice, I didn't pin here, but I am going to pin my bottom so that it's right at the right spot. Alright, I'll just grab my other G piece, and I'm just going to sew that one to the other side before I go and press. So again, just match up your ends, and I'm just going to pin the bottom to make sure that it's right in line when I get down there. I'll cut my little cheater piece off and put it back underneath. going to go and press those. And you're pressing towards your G fabric, which is your C1 piece. Right, I'm just going to take this piece off. All right, so I've got my center section pieced together, so you can see here my points are away from the seam. So next we're going to take our A2 piece. I'm just going to move that over, put it right sides together with your C1 piece, G fabric. And again, we're just going to sew that together. And again, I'm just going to pin my bottom to make sure that it's going to be right in line with the bottom here. Back here. Before I press that one, I'm just going to take my A1 piece and I'm going to put it on the right side of my piece section. So your A1 is going to your G fabric. Again, I'm going to pin my bottom piece here. Okay, so this is now ready for pressing, so I'm going to go over to my ironing board and we are pressing to the G fabric again. We have one placemat done. So this is what your placemat should look like. So again, make sure you're pressing towards your G on both sides. The reason we do that then is because then this will kind of sit up a little bit on top of your A1 and your A2 and your stripped piece, your pieced diamonds here. So I'm going to go and sew the rest of my placemats while you sew yours, and I'll be right back. everyone, I'm back with my placemats finished. So you should have 6 placemats with this set, and they should be looking like this depending on what fabric you're using. So now we're going to move on to our runner segment of the class, and I'll see you in a minute with that.